Hey guys, David here, and I want to talk really quickly, maybe not so quickly, about variability when it comes to fitness. And so a few things to look at. I've been really exploring this whole concept of epigenetics and polymorphisms, and of course I'm just throwing up big words because I want to charge more next year for what I do. Epigenetics just means above genetics, which means if the external reasons why genes express the way they do. And polymorphisms are some of those genes which act a little bit different than the average, right? So you may have a polymorphism for having a blue eye and a brown eye, and that's a very unique characteristic that it's not shared by the vast majority of the population. So knowing that these subtleties, these things do occur, it's why 10 people doing exactly the same thing, coming in at the same gender, the same age, the same relative body shape and body structure, but getting a small percentage, let's say 2 out of the 10, may get completely different results or no results at all because they have a polymorphism. They have a unique way of the body responding and behaving with stimulus. So the very first thing we need to look at, of course, is a dietary component. And if you don't know how many calories you're taking in, you don't know your macronutrient ratio, you haven't actually tracked it, you need to do that. Because it was said that people often underestimate their calories anywhere from 80 to 200%. That's massive if you're on a weight loss journey, or if you're trying to put mass on. That is, again, it's massive. If you don't know where your calories are and you're kind of guessing, don't guess, right? You need to plug them in, and when you plug them in, don't plug them in differently than what you've been doing in the past, right? So that's really important. So make sure that you keep you actually have an accurate, keep a 3-day food diary, or from this conversation, go back over the last 3 days, write it all out as to your best of your ability, and then plug it into myfitnesspal.com and come up with your macros and your of course your total caloric intake. It's be really interesting to see what that looks like. So that's one thing we can play around with, and we'll know after each meal that generally the degree of success we've had creating a good meal. Based on how full I am, how good I feel, how good my guts feel, and the length of time I'm satiated. So if my brain feels good, the energy levels are high, and I'm satiated for about 3 hours, then the combination was actually probably pretty accurate for me. So it's just a really good baseline way to look at it. And of course, what we eat for in this point in time now is we eat for the next 3 hours of our life, right? So food is always kind of based that way because really it's building products and a delivery transport medium for nutrition. That's what it's for. The other thing to look at, of course, is cardiovascular training, and really check to see if your intensity is there. Now, I would suggest wearing a heart rate monitor. If you don't have one, get one, because again, it's a way of tracking an absolute. If you see where heart rate is, we're going to keep pushing that number up, because if we find, let's say, for example, we're doing 30 minutes of cardio, 30 minutes a hit, and we're looking at our heart rate's at 142, and we're doing 30 minutes a hit, that's not a very high heart rate. I mean, people have higher heart rates like that, watching scary movies. But if we're doing high intensity interval training, sometimes our perception of exertion is really not as accurate as we may think it is. So we do heart rate training. We can put our heart rate in a particular zone, let's say at 172 or 185, and the thing will just keep beeping at us until we get it up there, right? Until we get our heart rate up high enough. So it's a really good way to track it, and it becomes a constant. So we're taking a variable and making it a constant, right? So rather than this abstract idea, yes, I'm training hard, look at all this sweat. And I've often said before, sweating is a mechanism of thermoregulation. It has nothing to do with intensity, nothing whatsoever. I'm sitting here sweating, and I'm just talking to you, right? So there's no intensity here other than my long-winded conversation. So get a heart rate monitor for your cardiovascular training. Find out what your normal heart rate zone is when you're training. The average heart rate that your body's expressing while you're training, and you should be up in the 175, 180, 185 when you're doing high intensity training based on your age, of course, but also based on your level of fitness. If you have heart rate issues using beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, that sort of thing, any sort of cardiovascular issues, you're asthmatic, of course, use due caution when you're developing your heart rate, your cardiovascular intensity. But again, it's a variable you can track and track it properly, and then you get to see exactly what you're doing if it's safe to do so. Strength training, okay, third variable. Of course, I watch people go train and say, yeah, I'm doing all this work, and I look at the weight they're using, and they're lifting, 60% less than what they're capable of, but they didn't know because it felt heavy. It was weight. Like watching a woman grab a child, 35-pound child with one arm out of a car seat, dragging the screaming, flailing infant. holds it to her chest because she's got a purse, a gym bag, and a latte in the other hand, goes in the gym, gets it all settled in. 20 minutes later, she's on the gym floor, curling a 10-pound weight. Like, what the hell is that? All right. You know, we have physical strength. Sometimes we need to flick on all those muscle fibers and turn them all on. And sometimes you got to move some weight. If you presently train at home, you may find at some point in time that will no longer be sufficient unless you have a very skookum setup at home. You may need to get into a gym. And for a lot of people who've trained over a period of time, that's the option. You have to leave. Eventually, you have to leave the nest to get into a gym because you just need access to the weight, to the machines that they have there to continue to move your body forward. But if you're training at a gym as it is, just question your ability. And what I would do on the last set of every exercise as a way to gauge is the weight that you're using. Do as many reps as you can do on the very last set of the exercise. So if you're doing chest and you've done 3 sets, and on the last set, do as many as you can. As many, and don't stop until you can't even hang on to the freaking weight. And do that for every exercise for each last set. And that'll be a really good indicator to tell you what you were doing prior. So if your last set, you got 15 repetitions, you got 20 pounds, and you did to 15, you go, man, I'm a rock star, right? And then I challenge you, and then you said, okay, Moran, I'll take you up on your challenge. And you did 15, is, well, maybe I'll do a few more, and you crank out 35 repetitions. Well, that's maybe you're not lifting enough, and maybe that's why your body's not changing because you're not challenging it. And I do that with myself as well. One of my goals was in the NHL, part of fitness evaluation is you had to press 225 pounds 25 times. And I've been a weightlifter for years, and I've lifted some significant weight during my time. But I started backing it off because I was concerned about my joints, and I didn't really want to destroy my joints so that I would have use of them in the years to come. So I played around with it, and the 225 sounding a big number. So, because I'd always stop around 12 or 15, when I got in that rep scheme. But I decided to play around with it, and so about 3 weeks ago, I hit 30 reps for 225, and then the second set, I hit 25 reps, 20, and then 12, and that was my rep scheme. And all I did was I went until I couldn't. And that's the whole idea about strength training, is that you take the body to the point where it's not used to and not comfortable. It's not about the rep scheme. The rep scheme is a suggestion, saying, we suggest you do 15 reps. But what we're really telling you is that by the time you hit 13, 14, you're wondering if you're going to bounce that weight off your face because you're that fatigued. That's the goal, right? So check on that. Last thing, okay, and I know it's a lot of stuff to think about, but that's the life we're in. And, if you're playing this game, it's part of the responsibility of learning how to make this stuff work. The last thing is mindset. So neuromodulation is an idea of how our thought process affects our body chemistry, which affects our body functions. And so neuromodulation really plays a powerful role in whether we move forward or whether we don't. People that obsess about weight and about belly fat and that sort of thing, people that really are overly obsessed about that whole thing, have a tendency not to lose the weight very easily because, well, your body goes where your thought is. And you make slight changes and alterations in your behavior that will keep you right where you're at. Not because you want to, just because it's your dominant thought process. So, somebody once jokingly said, if you want to be like a skinny person, think like a skinny person, right? And it's kind of true, because if you look at what is the behavior, for example, if you want to be a bodybuilder, you want to do what I do, what do you think I do? How do you think I eat? What do you think my thought process is? How do you think I approach training? How hard do you think I train? How many excuses do you think I make? Like, it's just, you wonder, what is the psychology and the physiology and the dietary behavior, and what does he do? The course I'm going through, there's a bunch of examples where they ask us for different parts of our life and different parts of our growth experience. Who do we look up to that really has done well in that environment? And what's their self-talk? What's their physiology? What state did they put in? What do they do when they're being challenged? And so we borrow other people's mindsets and strengths until they become ours, which is kind of cool. So mindset is really a powerful tool. So we look at the dietary point. So again, in recap, you have to know your calories. Figure that out. Don't guess, right? Otherwise, you're just making a big mistake by not knowing those numbers exactly. And then we can start playing around with those numbers and move it up and down to see how your body responds. Secondly, cardiovascular training, get a heart rate monitor. They're not that expensive. And again, they give us an absolute. They take a variable, put it into a constant, and we can track it. We can actually start tracking tracking those numbers. And then saying, I keep pushing that number up, that heart rate variable up, so my heart rate's higher and higher and higher. Good, that I know I'm being more successful, right? So to take a variable, turn it into a constant. The strength training piece, at the end of the last rep of each set, do as many reps as you can with the given weight, regardless if it says 10, 12, or 15. Push it as hard as you can and see what you can do. And the likelihood is that you probably got a lot more gas on tank than you thought. You were just holding back because maybe you never really experienced that absolute fatigue. And mindset, find out where that is, right? Are you hoping this works? Are you guessing this might work? Or are you certain this will work? And the thought process will actually determine your behavior, of course, which will give you your ultimate physiology. So that's that's the short and long of it, and hopefully it makes sense. And this is a hell of a journey. It's a lot of responsibility hanging on your shoulders, but of course we are here as your coaches and mentors and guides, and you got to just show up and do the work and become a great, great student. So have an amazing, amazing week, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.